Now, I feel like there's been an awful lot said about you. One headline, who is Dale Vince, the hippie turned eco-tycoon funding the Green Zealots? So how would you describe yourself?
I'm definitely a hippie or an ex-hippie. I don't think I'm a funder of zealots or a zealot myself, which I've also been called. I've been called many, many things, actually, and I think, you know, I don't give it much attention. I'm first and foremost an environmentalist. I care passionately about the unsustainability of the world that we live in, and I've spent the last 3 decades pioneering a number of different approaches to the green economy in energy and in transport, in food, in football, in diamonds, all kinds of stuff, to try and bring about a green Britain. All of my work, all of my focus on the creation of a green Britain.
There's been, I guess, more scrutiny about where you've been giving your money, right? £1.5 million to the Labour Party over the last 10 years, as revealed by Sky News back in January, and also, of course, money to Just Stop Oil. Is that a problem?
For me, no.
For other people, perhaps they're saying, I guess what other people might say, right, is, look, people don't just give hundreds of thousands of pounds of their own money for no reason. What is the reason for you giving the donations?
To who? Because, I mean, I also give money to Greenpeace, to Sea Shepherd, to a women's refuge, to school breakfast clubs, to food banks. You know, the list goes on.
To the Labour Party?
To the Labour Party. The reason I do that is because I want them to win the next election. And there's always a funding gap between Labour and the Tories, a very big funding gap, and I try to do what I can to close that gap.
Is it about influence as well?
No, never. And I'm always very clear with them, I don't want anything. And they're always very clear with me, there's nothing on offer anyway.
Do you think that at the back of their minds, if you take in £1.5 million, that there may be an influence question there?
For them? I don't think so. I think the question is really surfaced by the right-wing media. It was a couple of weeks ago. It's been going on for 10 years, right, funding of the Labour Party. But if you look at funding of the Conservative Party, you know, that's a completely different story. There's a lot of opaqueness, right? You won't find a funder of the Tory Party willing to come and talk to you about how much they've given or why they've given it.
So you welcome the scrutiny, then?
I've got no problem with it. I don't mind it at all. Obviously, I don't welcome the implications that come with it. There's some kind of deal going on behind, you know, closed doors, that kind of stuff. You know, the idea that my donations caused Keir Starmer to come out with the North Sea policy that he has, when in fact he announced that a year ago in Davos, and yet 2 weeks ago the right-wing press are like, oh, there's just 1.5 million over the last 10 years. Keir Starmer's got this new policy, which wasn't new, and you know, tried to join those dots and say there's something going on. It's not fun, but you know, it's how they roll, and I don't mind.
I mean, Rishi Sunak, for example, recently said, you know, it does appear that those eco-zealots at Just Stop Oil are writing Keir Starmer's energy policy. Not content with disrupting our summer and cherished sporting events, they're essentially leading us into an energy surrender. That's the Prime Minister's view.
And I think he said that was when he was in Washington, and you'd think he had better things to do. That's what I thought, anyway. And there's nothing original in that from Rishi Sunak. He has no mandate to drill in the North Sea for oil and gas. He actually has no mandate at all from the British people. He should call an election.
Do you talk to Keir Starmer and Ed Miliband, for example, about policy?
I've known Ed Miliband since he was leader of the Labour Party, so for some time, and we've talked occasionally, and I've talked to Keir Starmer twice.
And what did you say in those conversations?
Well, the last one, as I told the listeners of the Today programme, was a 5-minute phone call in which he thanked me for donations. And the next day, The Sun ran a headline that said, secret meeting unveiled. I told 6 million people, but I'd had a phone call. And that's what The Sun called it. This is what we're dealing with.
It's interesting looking at Labour's policy on green energy, right, because it is getting an awful lot of attention at the minute. So this is their Green Prosperity Plan, £28 billion a year to fund investment in the green economy. Now, Labour are talking about delaying reaching that £28 billion because of the economic situation. Do you think that's the right call?
First, I want to say Labour are getting a lot of scrutiny across the board.
Which is right, because they might form the next government, right?
It looks very likely, doesn't it? And I think this is what's causing some of the hysterical approaches of the right-wing media in terms of funding and that kind of stuff.
But what's that? Yeah, look, it's an interesting point to make. What's your view on the delay to the Green Prosperity?
I think it's not a problem. I think it's a very sensible thing to do. I think, obviously, we're in difficult economic circumstances, and there still could be a year or a year and a half before the election. We don't know how much worse the Tories will make it before the election. So it makes sense to say we may not go at this completely in the first year, the 28 billion, and it may take a year or two to reach that number. That's what I heard Rachel Reeves say, and I think it just makes perfect sense.
Do you think, there might be other people in the shadow cabinet who look at that funding, right? £28 billion a year, that's a lot, and think, hang on a minute, we've got schools, we've got hospitals that could really do with that money. Why are we spending that amount on one issue?
The thing about the green economy is it's a good investment for our country.
So is education, right? So is the hospitals that are saving people's lives.
Yes, and fossil fuels are not. For example, for every £1 billion we invest in fossil fuels versus renewable energy, we can get twice as many jobs from renewable energy and almost twice as much GDP growth from that investment. And so a lot of what we need to do to get to a green economy doesn't require money at all.
So would you like to see Labour be a bit more radical on green issues then?
No, I'm happy with where they are. It's not for me to say. I have my own opinion about stuff. I think, if they become the government, I think they'll be the greenest government we've ever seen in our country. And for me, that's enough, because I also believe that they understand the green economy, the environment issues, and they'll do the right things. If you look at what the Conservatives are doing, they're drilling for oil and gas in the teeth of a climate crisis, claiming it will lower energy bills, excuse me, when it can't, because we allow international markets to set the price of the fossil fuels we make here. And we pay 10 times more for our North Sea gas in the energy crisis than we used to, for no good reason. They also claim it will give us energy security, but we can't get new oil and gas out for 4 years if we start today, and after 20 years it's all gone. There's no security in something that's here today, gone tomorrow.
Look, you are passionate, right, about North Sea oil and gas. You can see that. There'll be other people listening to this who think, look, if you're wealthy, it's easy to be perfect when it comes to green energy, right? It's easy to drive electric cars. It's easy to make the case for green levies on energy bills. But I guess for many people who might not be as well off, they think that the priority right now should be all about the cost of living. It should be helping people feed their families, making sure that people aren't going to lose their homes. Is right now the time to be talking about these issues?
I think that it is, actually. And I don't support green levies on energy bills. They never should have been there in the first place. They should be paid for centrally, not because it punishes...
But that's still people's money, though, isn't it? You say pay for centrally, that's still people's money. It's not like magic money tree, right?
No,
people are still paying taxes.
No, but it's regressive when it's on energy bills, because the poor among us pay the most proportionally for their energy with green levies on. It shouldn't be paid for that way. It's as simple as that. And in terms of the cost of living crisis that we faced, our energy bills are a big part of that. If we transition to 100% green energy, and we're at nearly 50% electricity on the grid now already, by the way, if we make that complete transition, we can have permanently low energy bills, we can eradicate fuel poverty, we can separate ourselves from global fossil fuel markets and be truly energy independent. And in a great place, the economic benefit to our country is in excess of £50 billion a year, kept in our economy rather than shipped out to the rest of the world.
Now, I want to just finish by asking you a bit about Just Stop Oil. I think we might be able to see the latest protest by them. Now, this was disrupting the Ashes. You can see there Johnny Bairstow physically carrying off a Just Stop Oil protester. I mean, some people might like the police to take this approach when they're blocking roads, right?
I think you're right. I've heard that.
What's your own view?
I think it's comical. I think that much is being made of this in the news at the moment, and actually, it was a few minutes delay to the cricket, whereas the UN estimate that so far the climate crisis...
Okay, you've made your points on the climate change a lot. I'm just trying to stick to the Just Stop Oil just for now, if you may.
Because it's disruption. It's the point I want to make. A few minutes disruption, and the UN say 4 million people have already lost their lives, and 20 million people every year are made homeless globally by the climate crisis. That's a few minutes of cricket. People are losing their homes and their lives.
Is it doing that cause any good?
That's the question.
That's the killer question, though, isn't it? Well, we don't know, do we, right?
It's not the killer question.
Because,
It's the frequent question.
And I think the frequent question. But I think that many people think, look, delaying the cricket or a bit of colourful powder at the snooker is one thing. But the disruption to roads, where people might be trying to use ambulances to get to hospitals, where people are trying to, on 0 hours contracts, and they're worried about making it to their place of work, that's something else.
Well, look, I was on a protest around Parliament Square a few weeks ago, and they have a fantastic process for allowing flashing blue lights through. It really works. And there were two while I was there. We protested for about an hour. Then the police said, look, final warning. They've got a protocol for that. The protesters understand when the police say final warning, they get off the streets unless they want to be arrested. 4 people did that day. It's not as bad as it sounds. Central London traffic isn't very fast anyway. And it's a temporary delay. It's here today, gone tomorrow. The disruption
Do you
that
have
just
any
avoided
sympathy
causing.
for those drivers? You know, the ones who you see getting out their car, pleading
Yes, of course I
with
do.
protesters?
Of course I do. But I have sympathy for the 4 million people that have died already, the 20 million displaced, they're made homeless every year already, and the more that is to come for my children and my grandchildren as well, and yours.
OK. Final question. Do you have any vices when it comes to, you know, the green agenda? Do you can't give up your flight, or you have sausages once a week or something?
Have what once a week?
Sausages once a week.
No. Do I have vices? I like to sit around an open fire, sometimes outdoors, an outdoor fire, burning some wood. But I don't fly. I don't eat animals. You know, I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but do I have a vice? I like chips, but I don't think that's an environment vice. I just like chips.
That's a very fair vice to have. Thank you very much.